Hey everybody, we are back here to analyze our candy corn guess data. In this video, this is really going to be more also still introduction to Excel, but with our candy corn data. So before we continue, I need to do one thing. Please give me a second. We're here, back in the hot dog costume, because we're analyzing this data. So if you were not here for the other videos, feel free to go watch them, but our class made guesses as to how many candy corn were in this jar. And in the other video, I gave dimensions and things like that. So the purpose of this video and the next several throughout the entire course really is to use this data set to help us learn some of these concepts in statistics. And in particular, we're going to be using Excel to help us do this. Okay, so let's roll. Okay, so here we are in Excel. And if you are submitting this in my class, then notice that I have my title up here, or not my title, the way I've saved my document is how it's explained in the assignment. So please make sure you do that. A few things in Excel I want to go ahead and point out that at the bottom here we have things called sheets. So what you will end up doing throughout this challenge assignment is making sheets to answer, or not answer, but to analyze this data when you are doing your own data. So for example, sheet 1 here, we'll kind of start off with finding some summary statistics about our data set. And then sheet 2, for example, we might, in a different video, work on a box plot or things like that. So, but sheet 1 right now is where I'm going to stay focused. And I guess I should too mention, if you right click down here, you can rename sheets. So this could be, for example, challenge number 1. So this is the video I'm making for challenge number 1. So I'm just, as an example, you can rename it anything. Okay, so to get started in Excel, one thing I will mention is we could add, I'm going to talk about formatting things first. So here we kind of have a table of values, and Excel has these grayish borders here, but if you were to print this to actually be printed out on a PDF or physically a hard copy, these gray borders don't actually print out. So in order to add real borders to these and to make this look kind of nice, what we can do is highlight. So if you click and drag, if we click and drag down across the entire data set, for example, we can come up here and notice Excel has a lot of, first of all, tabs up here of things we can do, which we will jump into throughout the course. But on this page is a lot of formatting stuff. So here we have an option for borders. If you click on this, if you are familiar with Microsoft Word, these options are similar in a lot of ways. So here we have borders. If we add borders here, I'm going to add borders to the whole thing just to go ahead with that. So here we have all of these borders now. I'm going to make this column because I want all these words to go together. So you have a few options. If we wanted to make this column wider, if you hover in between columns, you can resize a column. You can also right click and type in a column width if you get used to that. We could also resize rows in a very similar way. If you hover between a row, you can resize a row. One thing that Excel does as well, this is a very wordy cell. There's several words here. So what I can do is wrap the content. So I can, what's called wrapping, I'm going to show, wrap text. So we're wrapping the text there. So if we click on this button, notice it kind of put underneath, it just fit it naturally into the cell instead of it going into the other cells. So that's how I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to resize it even. I'll leave it like that, and then there. Okay. This is how I just want to look at it. You can, format your data however you would like. So here I'm also going to show you we can, here, center. So I think I actually did that without meaning to. Or this merges, but anyway, don't worry about it. But so here we have options to center. You can also center vertically if you would like to. So I'll just click both of these. I kind of prefer data sets to be centered and symmetrical in this way. Oh, pun, because we're learning about symmetrical data sets, and that's a totally different thing, but that's hilarious to me. Okay, anyway, moving on. So here we have our data set, and I want to remind you these are all of our guesses. So in my last video, I explained the majority of these come from my Stat C1000 class, but some of these also came from my Math 310 class. Some of these came from family and friends. Some of these came from some other students I teach at an academy online. So we have a total here. Let's find out of how many guesses now. Since the last video, a few more guesses have come in, so I wanted to add those. So let's find out how many we have. One way to do this, so Excel, we're going to use our first function here. So our first Excel function, on the last video I talked about as soon as you put an equal sign, Excel thinks you're going to calculate something or click on a cell in some way. So this is what we are going to do. So if we start typing the word count, so COU is all I've typed in. Notice all of these options come up. So Excel has a lot of pre-programmed functions that can help us calculate things very quickly. So count is one of them. And notice if you hover here, it says counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So if we double click on this, it'll say, okay, now you're using this function count, and the input here, what you're going to input into this function in Excel, is the values you want to count, the cells you want to count. So one thing I want to point out here is it kind of implies you should click, comma, click, comma, click, comma, and do it that way, but that's not efficient at all, and that's not why we're using Excel. So one thing we can click and drag this across this entire data set, and notice too it color coordinates too. If you're working with several data sets, that can be very helpful, or even several arrays or several smaller data sets within that functions. It's very helpful. Okay, so then we can close these parentheses and hit enter, and this will tell us how many data values we have. 44. So we have 44 guesses that have been made. In statistics, we often call this number n, so this is the sample size. In fact, I will also show you how to insert a column here. So if you highlight a column, right click and go to insert, it'll insert a column ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and type sample size to help us keep track of, and I'll resize this column, of what these things are, but I wanted to go ahead and introduce some notation there as well. I'm going to reformat these. In fact, I'll go ahead and put a little border around it, and we can start building off of this. So we'll find several summary statistics of these data values, and I'll start putting them in this table. Okay. Not the only, but something else I wanted to talk about in this data is how to format, how to sort data. So right now, notice all of our guesses are just kind of randomly in this data set. So if we want to sort them so that we can kind of start getting a feel for it, start trying to investigate what's going on, if you highlight a data set, so highlight all of the values, and right click anywhere on it, you can go to sort. And then our options are sort smallest to largest, sort largest to smallest. If you do have data sets, for example, with names or things that have letters in them, something that will appear here as an option is to sort it from A to Z or from Z to A, things like that. So depending on what you're highlighting and trying to sort, it will change what options you're getting. So I'm going to go ahead and sort from smallest to largest. So notice this just went and it sorted everything. So here we have our entire data set. So if I scroll up slowly, you should see your guess somewhere here. And again, this shows us that we have 44 guesses. Okay, I'll pause here on this video, and in the next one, we'll continue on with analyzing this. So in the next one, we can start looking at, for example, mean, median, and mode. That might be a later video, but we'll look at relative frequencies. We'll look at percentiles and quartiles throughout these videos. But first, we're going to jump in how to make graphs, like how to use this data to make graphs in Excel instead of making graphs by hand, which is what we've been doing so far in the class. All right, thanks. I'll see you in a minute.